Greetings and salutations, and welcome to another edition of the YouTube channel Too Many Plugins in Delta X-Ray. I'm your host Alex. Today we're going to play a little bit of a Battlefield 5, the Feminist Edition, and have a little bit of a chat also about the Battlefield 6. I saw yesterday the review event, the multiplayer review event, and it was really impressive. So I'm expecting a lot. Oh my god. Still over there. Yeah, it looks really awesome. Hey, something is flipping out over there. Do you saw that? Yeah, very high production value what they did in the event. It was really awesome. There's gameplay also, what I saw so far. It's of course all curated, but you know. Man, I still, man, I couldn't save him, man. Yeah, really awesome. Going back to the older formula of Battlefield, so Battlefield 3 and 4, a little bit that kind of thing. So looked really impressive. The graphics are also the graphic requirements are actually well, they're not the lowest, but they are modest still. 8th gen Intel chip, 6600 or something. I think you can run it to 2600 Ryzen, 2600. Yeah, that's the minimum system requirement. So you know, that is not too bad. And then the graphics card is a Radeon 6700 or what was that? 2060. That's then the minimum. Yeah, that's then the minimum. And if you want to have it great, you need to have a 6700 XT or a GTX 3060 Ti. Exactly. Well. And then 16 gigs. So, but it's still in that category that I'm already seeing. You know, it needs really. That's why they come with these graphics cards. It really relies on ray tracing. That's why they come with the 2080 minimum as a minimum system requirement, and a 6700. You know, that's why. Recommended is then also an 8-core CPU, but it runs minimum on a 6-core 12-threaded CPU, 2600, and anything higher than that. So there you go. So and it's basically the same also as Doom Eternal, you know. System specs. So it's still high, you know, it's still that kind of thing, you know, that they're gonna exclude a lot of people with that. But there you go, that's what it is today, you know. And it comes also because of all the console conversions and stuff, you know, that, you know, PlayStation 5, you know, Xbox Series XS. And, you know, that, yeah, they basically, you know, create the games from there, you know, and take then a version and port it for PC. And this is why you also have that forced ray tracing and upscaling stuff in it. When you do ray tracing, then you automatically need upscaling also, you know. So still, again, you know, they're gonna exclude a lot of people, you know, because you can think, well, a 3060 Ti, that's not too bad, you know, or a 6700, you know, XT graphics card. But first of all, they're quite pricey still, those graphics cards. And second of all, these are the minimum specs. These are not the recommended specs, you know. Because, you know, recommended, you can imagine that if you start cranking that up, that a 3060 Ti or a 6700 is not going to be enough. If you go into a 1440p or 4K, and then, you know, I'm just, you know, man, how the fuck did he survive that, man? Man, and he still survived that, man. So yeah, they're gonna exclude again also a lot of players, you know, with that. But yeah, whatever. We got the Iraqi Slayer in our team. Gonna spend on the Iraqi Slayer and I'm gonna stay with him. Yeah, you know, so, and again, you know, this is already so competitive to market, you know, and there's so many games around, you know, and times are hard for people, you know, and there's also many people, you know, that maybe can even afford it, but they just have, you know, they buy, you know, an 800 euro or 1,000 euro PC, you know, and let's see, and if it's in a couple of years old, you can already not run anymore, you know, so I don't know, you know, I think that whole fixation that they today have with ray tracing and then upscaling and, you know, DLSS frame generation, you know, is they are relying too much on that, and by that they are excluding too many players. It's just my opinion, but you know, my main priority would be, if I was a game studio developer, you know, would be to run it on most hardware as possible, you know. And if you look at the Steam server, you know, what people are actually running today, you know, then you know, you just wonder yourself, you know, what are they thinking, you know?
Attention, we have lost objective Dora.
Just testing a little bit this configuration. A little bit of a breaks here and there. I don't know what that's all about, but could be my hard disk is a little bit full. Running here 1 terabyte SSD, but he's already a little bit full, and even SSDs, when they get less than 40 gigs of free space, they start being a little bit slow, sluggish. And they also wear out quicker if you always have them almost full. Let's say to maintain them in a good condition, you should always have like 40 gigs free or something, you know? Yeah, whatever. But it looks amazing, where a Battlefield 6, that it really does, you know, no doubt about it, you know, but, you know, again, that kind of thing, you know, yeah, ray tracing, all sorts of crazy light effects going on and stuff, Jack Frax, I think is his name, he already made some videos about it, you know, stam kan niet breken, a little bit, but, you know, yeah, I saw a little bit, yeah, more detail and stuff, yeah, obviously, you know, but also to be saying that I saw such a big, you know, graphical improvement compared to, you know, other Battlefield series or other kinds of, you know, milsim, military FPSs, you know. No, I didn't saw that also, you know, so. I don't know, man. I think these guys can way better start, you know, a little bit thinking about. Yeah, that doesn't work, of course. About bringing stuff more, you know, more in the hands of other people, you know.
Hier, erste Hilfe.
Yeah, I thought maybe he's still gonna save me, but not. Yeah, the fixation today on that, you know. It's, I mean, you know, juice ain't worth the squeezing, in my opinion. It's just my opinion, or don't take it wrong. But, you know, the graphical improvements that I see, you know, They are improvements, but they are not improvements that I just think that justify the amount of load that you get on your system, you know. I really don't think that with ray tracing. You ray trace stuff, they don't optimize it, then you need to upscale it from a lower resolution to a higher resolution, then you need to DLSS frame generation, and what you get is motion blur, you get, you know, things that look out of focus, ghosting, you get, you know, man, it's not just that I don't like ray tracing, I start to literally hate ray tracing, you know. How did he survive that, man?
Enemy down.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
The enemy now controls all the objectives.
Oh, goodbye. Tripwire bomb. Where is he? Oh, he's laying here behind the wall. That's interesting. Give me some of that.
Erste Hilfe gratis!
Where is he, man? How can he laying here behind the wall like that? Hey, you man. I was up there. Okay then.
Good job.
Oh yeah, I hope that that companies start a little bit dropping that kind of obsession with that kind of tech. I really hope that. It's probably not going to be, you know, because you know, it's big companies in the back, you know, that are pushing that, they invest in that, you know. It's also like Nvidia and many other countries in the PlayStations, you know. They just all want to have then all this technology in it and push game makers to and finance them, you know, for putting then ray tracing in it. And there's a lot of people that again need to go and buy a new graphics card, you know. You know, it's really sad, you know. First the fact was that you needed a graphics card that could run a game and had enough VRAM. Then it came the story that, yeah, you had enough VRAM, but your DirectX version is not the right one, you know. And now it is the frame generation garbage, you know, where your card doesn't work anymore because of ray tracing, and you don't have the right to a DLSS version because you are running still you know, a GTX 2000 series, and only 3000 series supports the DLSS 4.0. And now they found now 3 or 4 different things that then very quickly you need to go and buy yourself a new graphics card, you know. I mean, come on, you know.
Hier, für dich. Danke.
It's ridiculous, you know. Getting, you know, obsessive, you know that.
Objective Dora is ours.
I remember from the year 2000, I was running a graphics card. That was what was the name of that thing, man? A GeForce MX440, yeah. That graphics. I ever run that card for, I don't know, maybe about 6 years or something, you know. It had like 128 megabytes of GDDR1 in it, I think that still was, you know, on a 400 megahertz core, you know. And I ran that thing for many years, and then in 2005 or 6, it was all of a sudden that there was games coming out. There was then Constantine of the movie, the video game that came out, and it needed then pixel shaders, and if you didn't have that, then the game would crash. And then I bought a video card that pixel shader support was a GeForce 6600 GT or something. And then that card I stayed with for the next 6 years or something, 7 years to 2010-11. Then I bought a HD 6870 with 1 gigabyte of GDDR5. You know, but in that time it was 5-6 years that you could basically run the same card. And then playing the older games, you can keep playing, but then come also a newer game out that had some tech that you then couldn't do it anymore. But we went now to a thing where, you know, there's now cards that, you know, like look at the GTX 2080 Super, you know, that card is really not that old, you know. But it already is for Doom, The Dark Ages, and for Battlefield 6, it's already the minimum specs. So, and the minimum spec means that you have the lowest performance. That's the minimum of the minimum, you know, that you need, you know. And that one I don't even think supports the latest DLSS anymore and frame generation, you know, DLSS 4.0 or 3.0. I'm not sure on that, quote me on that, you know, but, you know, and a GTX a 1080 Ti, you know, is a card that already doesn't even support ray tracing, you know. I mean, you know. And then the 2080 Super is already one that is for many games the minimum spec, so you are already running the things low, you know. You know, and these cards are really not old, you know. They're now just all the time finding all sorts of ways of, you know, making money and making your hardware obsolete, you know. I have a whole shitload of games, it's really interesting. That's games. I mean, the card that I'm running, the K2200, doesn't support DirectX 12. This one actually does, the W600 Fire Pro, but the other one's not, you know. And the funny thing of that, you know, is that the K2200 should actually be capable of playing many games without any issue whatsoever. But it doesn't. It's because it doesn't support DirectX 12. But let me tell you, most games that doesn't run it are games that could perfectly run on DirectX 11. I mean, for many years we had all sorts of games that run perfectly. They supported DirectX 12, but you could still run them on DirectX 11. You could still run them on DirectX 10, and there are even games that still supported you could run them on a DirectX 9 card, you know what I mean? Or DirectX 10 card, you know. And now we got... you know, to a situation where very quickly games and, you know, they're not supported anymore, you know, come on, you know. And then they're, by the way, also locking down hardware, you know, I mean, they're now doing also tricks, you know, that is just also so crappy, you know, and yeah, let's actually talk a little bit about that nonsense, you know. Is the nonsense what they're doing with graphics cards and with PCI Express interfaces. So they released processors that, you know, only support PCI Express 3.0. So you cannot use the fastest drives. You need to then get the motherboard that supports PCI Express 4.0 and then an NVMe drive that supports PCI 4.0, and then you need even a what was that all about? A processor, a motherboard that supports that, and an NVMe drive that supports it. But then it gets a little bit more ridiculous, you know. Is you start looking at graphics cards that they today highly limit also, and again is with PCI Express they pull off this joke, you know, where you have a modern graphics card that only work in PCI Express 5.0 8x or 4x. And what does that mean? That's very smart. That's really marketing, you know, is because like that, there are many people with older PCI Express platforms that have a terrible performance with those cards because they don't have PCI Express 5.0 in interface. They only have 3.0, and in 3.0, if you run something in 8x or 4x, you have a terrible performance, you know. And this is all ways of them to sell you again new CPUs that support PCI Express 4.0 or 5.0, and also you know, graphics card or even motherboards, you know, because there are even many motherboards also that support only PCI Express 3.0. So if you then buy the latest low-end card or mid-range card, you get only a PCI Express 5.08 4X or a 4.08X. You know, and then you need to change your whole platform, your CPU, your motherboard, and you know, because if you don't have that, those cards will really perform actually really bad in PCI Express 3.0 motherboards. You know, now they're rare, and that's the problem. You know, are you seeing what I mean? AMD is a little bit doing that lately. You know, if you start looking also to they are starting to be a little bit like Intel. You know. Because they basically, you know, they won the market over with their Ryzens and stuff. You know, also on the consoles, these are also sort of just running Ryzen APUs. You know, PlayStation and Xbox. You know, and you know, so they have strong CPUs, and they basically also with the screw ups that Intel did the last generations. You know. Chips is dying very quickly, you know. Yeah, they are now the market leader in CPUs. Everybody wants an AMD Ryzen, you know. People don't want Intel. They're more expensive and they die quickly, you know. There's also some stability problems with them in the last couple of generations. Motherboards even burn, and you know, there's a lot of things bad going on. But you know, the issue with that is that you know, AMD thought, okay, we are now market leader, you know. And let's suck the most out of our market. And in the moment that they started really being stronger with AMD, and I'm talking about after AMD 2000, especially AMD 3000 series, so Zen 2, they just started actually being evil Knievel, and they immediately started limiting their chipsets to certain versions only support PCI Express 3.0. For example, the Ryzen 5500 is, if you have the latest graphics card, you shouldn't buy that chip. Because that chip only supports PCI Express 3.0. If you run a B450 motherboard or an A520 or a B320, A320 motherboard, you only have PCI Express 3.0. If you then have a graphics card, the latest one, that runs on PCI Express 5.0 4X or something, you have a really negative, bad experience. So, you know, you just have poor performance with that, you know. So these guys are deliberately doing that, you know. This is all for marketing reasons. I'm stuck. You know, and it's always the problem, you know, when they become market leader, you know, then they think we are God and we can do whatever we want. And, you know, and I'll tell you something, in the old times I've never seen these kinds of perfectly done, how could I say this, you know, crippling something on purpose. It's like you have a product and you deliberately cripple it, you know, to make sure that you sell more products or sell your more high-end products, you know. Is that a little bit us, you know? In the old times, there were no differences there were differences in caches and stuff, but there were no differences in what kind of SATA interface you had or what kind of PCI Express interface you have, you know? But now I've noticed in the last generations that they deliberately have done that, man. They are deliberately crippling stuff so they can sell you more stuff or more expensive stuff. Deliberately. They are doing that. There's no need for that, you know. If you are creating silicone, why are you creating silicone, you know? And you're not going to tell me, you know, putting more cache in a CPU is, for example, a real issue that actually in the production of CPUs is more expensive in the production of silicone. But putting a little bit stronger memory controller there or a more recent PCI Express controller is not more expensive, you know. That's deliberately done that to cripple your market. So the low-end stuff that you have, so you sell more of it because people need quicker to upgrade, you know. Or you sell quicker and easier your other high-end stuff, you know. You know, and that is just why they have done that, you know. In the old times we never had that kind of stuff, you know. So in the old times there were chipsets that performed better, you know. You had you had a little bit of issues. For example, if you look at AMD 970 chipsets, what was the differences between the 970 chipset and the 990 FX chipsets? Well, there wasn't really much between it, to be very honest. There really wasn't, you know.
I got you, Tom.
Many times what you had then that you could run Crossfire, and then you didn't have one 16 slot and one 4x slot, but you had one 16 slot, and then you had one 8x slot, or sometimes even two extra slots in it, to put even 3 graphics cards, and that was about the difference, you know. There was really nothing between it, you know. I mean, yeah, the FX, the 990 FX series, they could support a little bit, how do you call that, more high-end chips. So one that had very, very high TDP. But for the rest, there was nothing between it, you know. It was still just running a PCI Express 2.0 x16 interface. Then with 1 or 2 extra slots, one 8x and one 4x for Crossfire. And then you had a little bit better power delivery, VRM, so you could run like really like the highest end, highest TDP CPUs in there, and then overclock them also. And that was about the only difference between the 970 and the 990 FX chipset between AMD. There weren't other things that were crippling, you know. You had there still the same PCI Express 2.0 16X as your main graphics driver, you know. They weren't limiting that. Now they're doing that, you know. They're deliberately crippling those kind of things, especially in the lower end boards. They're really doing that. I'm totally distracted today. I'm playing Abysmal, but there you go.
Hear this. Objective Baker has been lost.
And that you, of course, companies that want to make money, you have the bean counters, no, to make sure that every little part in a product that you buy that can find a way of saving money and making it cheaper and sourcing it cheaper, so you know, they can sell you that motherboard with more profit. Of course, that is just normal, that, but to deliberately cripple and nuke things that to corporation that doesn't cost them anything extra, you know. That is what I think is really bad, you know. And deliberately start taking things away that used to be for many years in most motherboards the same, you know. That whole thing of the 8X also, graphics cards that are sold all of a sudden, not with a 16X interface, but all of a sudden with a PCI Express, you know, 5 and then 4X interface or 8X interface. And yeah, that works if you have then also PCI Express 5.0 motherboard, but if you have a 3.0, it seriously nukes your performance. It really does. It's a little bit the same as, you need to see that also the same as if you buy a graphics card. Nobody wants a graphics card that has a 64-bit memory interface. You really don't want that, because those cards just perform like absolutely dog shit. The Radeon 6400 is an example of that. And the 6500. These cards are with 64-bit memory interface. And then they... And then they also have those kinds of interfaces on it. PCI 4X, PCI Express 4.0 8X interface. And the later, the more recent cards, they have a PCI Express 5.0, and then it's a 4X interface. And 4X in 5.0 is still fast enough for those low-end cards. But you know, if you stick it then in an older board, then it performs miserable.
I'll store your power.
So yeah, they're lately really busy doing that. Deliberately taking features away. Features that don't cost anything extra to a company. But yes, those features removed from more low-end things makes people buy a more high-end thing. Or more quickly will buy then again another more low-end thing with then a more recent interface in it, you know? And that's the problem. When the FX CPUs came out, it was in the same time that the FX came out. All my friends were buying Intels, 2500K, 2600K, really good CPUs by the way. I even advised most of my friends to do that. But me myself, I bought an FX CPU, and in that time I was saying to my friends that also because it was in the time the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 came out a little bit afterwards, and they were running also Jaguar architecture that's based on the AMD FX. And I was saying to my friends, I know that the FX is not a good CPU. 2500K Intel and 2600K is way quicker. But I know that in the future AMD is gonna be the leader of the market in the next 5 to 10 years. And I was right, because 5 years later they released the first Ryzens, and since then they have just basically, they have nuked Intel basically almost out of the market. Because they had that start, you know, they had a good enough architecture that worked on console, okay-ish architecture that needed to be refined, and had that problem with the memory modules, the FX. So stutter, 0.1% lows were dipping very low many times in-game. But other than that, I was seeing that they had already 8-core CPUs, you know, in 2012, you know, with the FX, you know. So, and they were really reasonable price that normal people could just buy, you know. So I was just seeing that AMD was gonna rule in the future, you know, and I was right. But then I have to tell you, in that time, Intel was way ahead. The Intels in that time, the 2500K, 2600K, you know. They were way ahead, you know, and they were just the i5s, 2500K, were just 4-core and 4-threaded chips, and then you had the 2600K, there was the i7, was 4-core, 8 threads. But in that time, Intel was way ahead of AMD in IPC. Instructions per clock and frequency and memory controllers, they were way ahead. They had always the latest PCI Express interfaces and the fastest memory. In that time, Intel was way ahead, you know. But I was seeing that they were gonna make it, you know. Save your butt already 2 times, dude. Or dude in. I need to start now paying a little bit attention because I'm playing absolutely dreadful. I, by the way, don't have overclock applied over here. So we are, well, on the CPU it's still running in overclock. I just left it there on 3.5 because it just runs so sweet that, you know, why I'm going to take it away, you know. So it runs really good, cold, low power consumption, so I just left it on 3.5. But the graphics card is now not in overclock, and I'm noticing that a little bit. But yeah. But AMD, now that they became market leader, they went like, hey man.
We fight to the last.
Yeah, first aid for you.
Yeah, they went a little bit greedy.
Get back fighting, soldier.
Now, in my case, that whole story of PCI Express that we just talked about, in my case, it doesn't matter because if you run all the graphics cards, they have just PCI Express 3.0 x16. You know, it's not like this modern garbage graphics cards where they deliberately have lowered that. In the old time, that didn't exist, you know. You didn't have a graphics card. Even the lowest and cheapest cards with 64-bit memory interface They all had a 16x PCI Express interface, you know. PCI Express 3.0 or 2.0, you know. But now they're just deliberately just... holy moly, what's that all about, man? I didn't saw that, man. I thought... Oh man, I couldn't even save him. What was going on over there? Anyway. It was because he was laying against the wall. Oh, thank you, dude. Oh, you won.
I owe you, fella.
So yeah, they are now just doing that. So, but if you run an old graphics card before 2020 or something that you bought, then you don't have that problem with the nuked PCI Express interfaces. They all just run on 16X, PCI Express 3.0, 4.0, 5.0. You know, yeah, the old ones had that, you know. But now they are deliberately nuking that, and then that doesn't also. If you then have just a recent CPU and motherboard, then if you have that, then just, you know, PCI Express 4.0 or especially 5.0 on your CPU and on your motherboard, they're more expensive, those chipsets and those CPUs. You know, then that doesn't matter, you know. But if you run a little bit older one, or you buy a low end also, that's a problem also. If you then buy a motherboard, an A320 or a B520, or you have still a B450 motherboard, then you are again limited, you know. You have really poor performance. So you then, you know, you shouldn't buy you know, if you then have the latest graphics card, you can already not buy a B450 or an A520 board anymore. You need to buy then an A550, oh sorry, a B550 or B570, I think is the other name of the other ones, you know. You need to really to buy that then, because otherwise you're gonna have poor performance. And you need CPU like minimum 5600 X or something that supports already PCI Express 4.0 or some Ryzen on DDR5, so the 7000 series, 8000 and 9000 series. You know, the higher end one have PCI Express 5.0, the mid-range have 4.0, and I think there's even a low end one that also only have PCI Express 3.0. And then again, you're limited. If you have those graphics cards with 8X or 4X, 4.0, 5.0, you have abysmal performance. And there's no need for that. That's literally just done to make money and nothing else, you know? And to make your stuff quicker obsolete. They are now literally crippling things that were never, they shouldn't be crippled. Those things were never crippled in the old times, and now they are. So if I now want to buy a new graphics card, and I'm running in now the K2200, for example. If I buy the 6600, I have bad performance. If I buy the 6700 XT, I'm probably gonna have good performance, because I think that is PCI Express 4.0 16X. But if you buy a lower end card, then it's 4X or 8X. And the Ryzen 5 5500 and the B450 motherboard only supports PCI Express 3.0. If I stick one of those modern graphics cards in here, I'm gonna have limited performance. I'm gonna have way less performance. You know, and in the old times that didn't used to be. So you need to then start upgrading things. There's many people that start wondering many times, why are these 2016 to 2020 second-hand graphics cards still so in demand, and that they ask so much money for it, you know? Well, they're so in demand is because many people, they don't have high-end recent hardware. If they buy a new graphic card, they're crippled. So they prefer to go for the little bit older graphics card that just have an old school 16X 3.0 interface, and they slot it in their B450 motherboard, and they have full performance. So there you go. And AMD also, after AM4, they did so well. They, what was that all about? You saw that?
Soldiers, we are losing objective Able.
Counts as a kill. My God. Yeah, the AMD 7000, 8000 and 9000 series CPUs, you know, they are also like extremely hiring the prices of those things. In that series, there's the cheapest one that's there. I think you can get it like through AliExpress for like $90 or something. But most of the other ones, and I don't even trust those kind of things coming from AliExpress. But if you look at most of the other chips that they have,
Get patched up, soldier.
they are 150, 180, and that's then also eBay and AliExpress. Here in Portugal, the cheapest ones that I see of those series are between 160 to 180 euros. The cheapest ones for for AM5, DDR5, you know. And AM4, you could get a way cheaper one, you know, CPU. 6-core, 12-threaded. Like the 4500, that's 52 euros. Or the 5500, you know. That is 70 euros in this moment, you know. So, you know what I mean? It's...
We can still turn this around.
Grenade from us. Voilà, vous êtes soignés. That's the first aid marker.
Oh, you got him already, okay. Medic! So AMD is now just thinking we are market leaders and we just hire the prices and limit our low-end stuff, you know. And that's kind of crappy, you know, because AMD used to always be the budget option. AMD, years ago, they weren't the market leader. And if you wanted the budget PC, you bought a AMD, you know. And because of that, they became market leaders. And now that they're market leaders, what they started doing was seriously limiting and crippling their low-end stuff, which they used to be the best in. Everybody used to buy, if you wanted something affordable, you know, you bought an AMD, you know. So, you know, it's... I don't know, you know, I find that a little bit crappy, that, you know. And the last almost decade, they're heavily competing with Intel. And now after the last screw-up of Intel, 13 gen and 14 gen, you know, Intel screwed up so hard that now it's not even a question of competing. It's now a question that in this moment Intel is not even competing. They screwed up, you know. Nobody now in this moment even trusts their stuff because their CPUs are just dying on people and the motherboards are just burning up, you know. So, you know, it's...
I'm helping you.
You know, it's that, you know. You gotta see that a little bit, you know. My God. So they're market leaders that in this moment basically don't have competition. There are no other CPU creators out there in the world. Who else, you know? Where else are you gonna buy a CPU? I listen that Nvidia is starting to also produce their own CPUs. More like a kind of x86 kind of stuff. But other than that, you know, and they're still in development for that, you know. Their ARM stuff is way better, you know. But they started also focusing on starting to create x86. But they're still very far away. And there's a bunch of Chinese companies that are a couple of generations back on Intel and on AMD. They're so so backwards that in this moment they're really not competing, you know. But other than that, you know, in this moment, the only option you basically have is AMD, and therefore they thought, let's just milk as much out of that as we can. And if you don't have competition, why not?
Have this first aid. Got you, soldier.
Objective Able is lost.
So yeah. But the problem is also sometimes it's better to be the budget option, you know, instead of making a shitload of money, you know. It's maybe sometimes it's better instead of that you sell a couple of products that are really expensive. Sometimes it's better to just sell products cheaper, but sell many of them, and then you make money also, you know.
I'm here, mate. I got you, chum. Big one. That's all for you, folks.
Oh my god. I really tried, man. So yeah.
Damn, we are losing objective dog.
You know, if you make yourself a very high-end if you make your company into a very high-end product, and you start like wow, you got your success because of budget low-end products, you know, then don't be surprised also if that in the future another company that says, hey man, you now want to be the high-end top of the line manufacturer, that hey man, maybe we make a chip. It can come from China, it can come from Nvidia, some other company, even Intel could take that over and say, hey man, let's start again, let's take the market that AMD had 10 years ago, the budget market, and we'll take it back, you know, because that's what's going to happen then, you know. AMD, if you don't buy AM4 but you buy the latest of AMD, AM5, they're not a budget option at all. They're actually very expensive, AM5. You know, that's why I always talk about AM4, you know. If you take AM5, it is a significantly more expensive CPUs. Motherboards are more expensive, memory is way more expensive, you know. So, you know, don't be surprised, you know.
More first aid.
And then Intel can come back all of a sudden also, because they're still a giga corporation. They're, you know, they have a lot of money to spend. They have a lot of research and how do you call that? Experience, you know, of being decades, being basically, you know, even the inventors of x86, as far as I understood it. You know, in the old times they competed them with Motorola, the 68,000 and stuff. But you know. Do you see what I mean, you know? You shouldn't also underestimate Intel, that they all of a sudden come back, because while their latest chips, they had these problems, they died, they burned up, they were unstable, they were really impressive, you know? And what they made before was very impressive also, so, you know, they still have that knowledge there, and if they can work out these bugs, you know, they can all of a sudden really come back, you know, and then, you know, then all of a sudden, you are not the budget option anymore, you know. The high-end option also anymore, or at least there's competition in it. I saw that some time ago, after these bad mistakes that Intel made, that Intel used to be always the more expensive option. And what I saw the last time, I saw stuff of Intel that was way cheaper than what AMD had to offer on DDR5 CPUs and motherboards and stuff. You know, Intel in this moment on the low end, the budget level, if you buy the latest of the greatest, then Intel is more budget friendly than AMD in this moment. It's really true. One's done.
Here for you.
Yo, do you see how quickly that goes? You know that?
I'll show you how.
Go, 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 motherfucking shit.
We're losing objective Able.
Extremely distracted today. And Intel also has a problem also, is that they are, for many, many years, they create their own fabs, so their own silicon production facilities, that they don't outsource that. And the problem is that they already, several years backwards, they were having really trouble keeping up with the nanometers that TSMC, the Taiwanese semiconductor producer, was really good in doing. And they were really low already in nanometers, and Intel had many years had a problem with their own FOBs to also get to very low microns of silicon production. And Intel kept on investing in big plants, and then the last failing architectures were made in their own fabs, in their own fabrics, and they had these stability problems, and that they failed and they burned up and stuff very, very quickly. You know, and so they still haven't refined that, you know, and so crazy that now they've released another generation of Intel CPUs that are not even made in their own fabrics, in their own fabs. They're just made by TSMC in Taiwan because they just do it better after the 12 and 13 or 13 and 14 gen failures and instabilities and CPUs burning up. So you know, Intel in that is really struggling, you know. They for 7 or 8 years they're having the biggest complication of going lower than 14 nanometers. To go from 14 to 10 nanometers, they were for years struggling with that. And the TSMC, where AMD makes his CPUs, was already then on 4 nanometers, you know. And Intel could not even go. They were on 14 and were trying to go to 10, and they just for many years couldn't do it, you know. You know, and you know, it's a little bit the problem that with Intel, you know, they have lost a lot. They have lost a lot of money with that, in creating their own fabrics, their own silicon production facilities, which is they're huge things, you know. You know, and also, yeah, that problem of just not.
Hier, erste Hilfe.
Not succeeding in going low in lithography, you know. So Intel is struggling already for a long time with that.
Hier, erste Hilfe, Soldat.
Good. Objective Dora is ours now.
Just a moment here. Gonna keep this one over here, folks, because I have something to do. Somebody passed by, so sorry about that. Thank you much for watching and listening. A little bit later on we'll give still a stream. Cheers and beer.